Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap and I'm in sunny Barcelona, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to test the cameras out on the new Galaxy S10 Plus versus the iPhone XS to see how they compare in terms of selfies, video quality, portrait modes, all that good stuff. So we've got some very cool things lined up today and I can't wait to test these cameras out properly. Saf, what do you think? iPhone or Samsung?
Both.
Both. Nice. It's a great consumer advice there from Saf. So let's start with some selfie videos, and they both look pretty good, although I can see the colors on the iPhone look a little bit more natural. I'm not sure what you guys think, although one thing that you can do with the S10 Plus in this case, which you can't on the iPhone XS, is actually shoot 4K video with the front camera. So I'm not sure if you can tell any difference in terms of the stabilization, also the quality, the crispness of the S10's footage versus the iPhone XS in Full HD. Now, before we talk about the actual quality differences between the cameras, I want to talk about the lenses that we get. This first shot is taken on the primary wide lens, and then we have the telephoto lens, which gives us a 2x optical zoom. And then where the S10 stands out is its third lens, the ultra wide, which, as you can see, compared to the iPhone's standard wide lens, well, you get an awful lot more in the frame. Here's another example. This is using the main lens on both phones, and then we zoom in with the telephoto lens, both of which look great, although I do kind of prefer the more vibrant colors we get on the XS. But then back to the main lens for the iPhone and then the ultra wide for the Galaxy S10. You just get so much more in the picture, and personally, as someone who posts quite a lot on Instagram, that wider field of view can make some of my shots look a lot more interesting. And I have to say, I was actually a little bit surprised about this photo. I kind of thought I got them the wrong way round, because usually the iPhone XS handles dynamic range a bit better. But if you look at the brighter areas on the stone pavement, there's a lot more detail in the S10, whereas the highlights are more blown out on the XS. But then things flip around. Whereas I preferred the S10 on the previous photo, here the iPhone XS definitely comes out on top. The colors of people's faces are far more natural, and you can see the food on the market stalls is much better exposed and much more color accurate on the XS. Now moving on, and this photo is really interesting, and somewhat contrary to the first photo we saw, the iPhone XS actually is handling the dynamic range, the bright areas, much better than the S10. And overall, for quite a tricky shot, we've got lots going on here, I think the iPhone definitely wins. So this picture is using the rear camera without portrait mode. It's just a straight photo. We've got Aaron, Mr. Who's the Boss on the left there, and John from Gadgets John on the right. And actually, the first thing that strikes me is how similar they look. But you can see the colors on the S10 are a little bit more vibrant, and overall it's a bit of a sharper photo, versus the slightly more flat, but I would argue more natural looking iPhone XS. So it kind of comes down to a matter of taste. Do you want a more natural shot or a sharper, more vibrant look? Tell me which one you think looks better in the comments. Moving on to the selfie camera, and before we talk about live focus and portrait modes, this is just a normal selfie shot. All camera settings have been left at their default, so if there is any beautifying going on the S10, which it looks like there is a bit because my face is definitely a little smoother, well, that's how it's going to look out of the box unless you tweak the settings. So the S10 does offer a brighter shot, but I am drawn to the XS, which looks far more natural, and it just looks like a more professional photo. Plus, there just seems to be a slightly blue tint to the S10. If you look at my white grey t-shirt, it's a more natural color on the XS. Now, putting it into portrait mode on both, by default, I think the S10 does offer a more visually striking picture, although you can of course adjust that level of background blur in the app after you've taken the shot. So you can reduce that bokeh to make it a bit less intense. It is quite striking though to look at the difference in my hair between the photos. The S10's is a lot sharper, arguably over sharpened if I'm honest, so it is quite a different look. I have to say, I really do prefer the iPhone's selfie camera. The colors, the detail, the exposure on my face, my forehead, the iPhone really does come out on top. One benefit you do have with the S10 Plus though is that you can get a slightly wider angle selfie as well, thanks to that second front-facing camera. Alright, so let's move on to some video. Both phones can shoot up to 4K 60, although this is shot at 4K 30, which is nice and stabilized. And of course you then also have the option of using the telephoto zoom lens on both. But I think zoomed in, the iPhone's video is a little bit smoother, and the text on that Huawei banner is also quite a bit sharper. And overall, it just seems a bit more vivid and less washed out than the S10's. I definitely do prefer the colors on the XS, but like photos, you do actually have the option of filming with that ultra-wide lens, something the iPhone XS just doesn't have. So you do have a little bit more flexibility with the S10's camera, even though overall, I am leaning towards preferring the quality on the iPhone's shots. So the next job is to test video stabilization, because there's a new feature on the S10 called Super Steady, which should give you even smoother 1080p video. And to test this, I'm going to go in one of these. One of the new features on the S10 phones is something called Steady Shot, and even if you have the settings set to 4K, if you enable Steady Shot, you'll then record at full HD, and that allows you to get slightly smoother video. And side by side, I do think the S10 with Steady Shot, these are both shot at 1080p, does look a little bit smoother. But then if you look at the city in the background and the exposure of it, then, well, even if the S10 is smoother, I think I prefer the iPhone's video as a whole. But what about slow motion? Well, both phones can shoot 240 FPS at full HD, and that's what we're seeing here. And side by side, there isn't a huge amount between them. Although again, I think the iPhone does handle the exposure and the dynamic range just a little bit better overall than the Samsung. However, the S10 does have a trick up its sleeve in the form of 960 FPS super slow motion at 720p. You do need very, very good light to make this look anything other than absolutely terrible in terms of quality, but it is an extra feature and you can get some crazy shots. I mean, that helicopter looks like it's just static even though the blades are going round. Moving on then to some low light shots. And this is a portrait mode photo taken with a rear camera on both phones. The iPhone takes a portrait mode shot using its telephoto lens, whereas the Galaxy S10 uses its primary wide lens. I think both photos have merit, although I am drawn to the S10's more because it's just a bit more vibrant. Obviously there's more context to the photo because you can see a lot more. But I do think if you want a more professional aesthetic to your portrait photos, the iPhone is better. However, in this low light shot, the S10 is clearly the winner. Just look at the difference in the colors, the vibrancy. The variable aperture means it can switch between f1.5 and f2.4, and then so at nighttime it can go to that f1.5, let more light in, and produce a nicer looking photo. Now, apologies to Baz for including this photo in this video, but I thought it was a good test of, well, people take photos of each other at pubs and in low light bars, so this is how they come out. Between the two, I think I prefer the iPhone's shot here. There's less noise, it's a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer looking, and while the S10 arguably is sharper on his face, if you look at the wall and the picture frames, there's a lot of grain and noise there, and overall I think the iPhone's just a more pleasing shot. There's clearly some beautification going on with the Samsung. As I say though, I've left it all at default settings, and I'm not sure which one I really prefer. The iPhone XS takes a, well, more realistic, better looking photo, but I kind of do like the brighter look of the S10. Now here's a properly good nighttime shot, and there's a lot going on here. First of all, if you look at IKEA, the IKEA sign and the little yellow paint to the left of it, it's much better exposed, much less blown out on the iPhone. Whereas the Samsung is a bit more vibrant, a bit more vivid, but I don't think the photo is as good. Although once again, having the option of an ultra-wide lens is pretty cool. So to conclude, which is best? Well, they're both excellent cameras. Personally, I do prefer the iPhone XS across the board. I think photo quality in terms of colors, dynamic range is just a little bit better, but I do appreciate the extra versatility you get with the Samsung's ultra-wide lens, the fact that you get things like steady shot, 4K selfies, 960 FPS slow-mo. There's a few extra bells and whistles, but the truth is you can't go wrong with either. But what do you think? Which one do you think won this test? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chap.